did is that conditions with potential for the same kind of situation we had yesterday afternoon and into the evening hours. But it ended up not turning out quite that way. The fire had moved into this area and had gotten along the top of a ridge there, and with these long, very strong westerly winds that were blowing on the fire. In this complex terrain down here to the south end of the fire, that is normally a very challenging situation for the firefighters to go out and be able to be effective on. In this case, what that did was create a situation where the winds were really battling each other all day long. And so it never was able to establish that very strong, consistent westerly push to push the fire today. And so crews were really effective at when they were able to get in and work on the fire edge today as a result of that, because we had much reduced fire behavior because of more of a flanking fire than it was a crown fire. Did have this spot out here to the east that was in alignment with the wind, and you can see it did get very active. And we did have some active runs out here towards the eastern end here, but it did burn into some lighter fuels, and crews continued to be effective.
I am for you.
Going into tonight, then, that because of the work that those crews did, because of the reduced fire behavior, we're having a pretty substantial increase out here on the eastern edge of humidity recovery tonight, along with the lightening of the winds and the wind shift. So what that's going to do is really slow down fire behavior, not just for tonight, but into tomorrow morning as well. And so we won't see those strong, those big push, or that big alignment of it where we get these big pushes out of it as a result of the dry weather and those very high winds that we had over the last couple of days. So lighter winds for tomorrow. They're still going to be pretty strong relatively, but there will be a lot more moisture into it. So that does a couple of things as well. Reduces the spotting potential substantially, but it also reduces the possible distance that those spots could go as a result of those lighter winds. So. After tomorrow, we do go back into the cycle of a little bit drier weather with winds starting to creep back up as the week progresses. And that's kind of what we have set up. And that's it.
Okay, great. We'll switch over to Operation Section Chief Paul DeMerico. We're going to use a computer map, share a screen, and hoping that helps with visibility on the map a little bit.
Good evening, Paul DeMerico, Operations Section Chief, Team 1, Rocky Mountain Team 1. So talking about the west side and the north side of the fire, no issues, no concerns, looking really good. We continued to work on the Highway 14 corridor, mitigating any hazards, mostly hazard trees. The concern there is that if we repopulate the area too soon, trees will become an issue along the roadsides, and we don't want anybody getting hit with fire weakened trees. So we're making sure that's safe enough prior to repopulation. Now we're going to get down into Division Tango on the east side of the fire. Like we talked about, I made a really good run the day before. We did get a little bit fortunate in a lot of ways, like Glenn had mentioned, where the fire really didn't do a whole heck of a lot. Like we had those battling winds today. So it really created a pretty good backing fire in here. But we were successful today mostly on the Buckhorn 44H road, keeping that in check. And I want to explain why we're working on the 44H Buckhorn road. This is really important for us to get this wrapped up so we can continue around and grab that anchor point. We still have a lot of values of risk of the Glacier View, Red Feather, and Crystal Lakes. We've spent a lot of time and effort up in that area, really mitigating the fire threat to those communities. And last thing we need is one spot fire here when it's really manageable, and then it creates another threat to those communities. And we feel like another day or so of direct and indirect line construction, mostly direct of using that road system. A little bit of indirect in this little piece here is a little tough spot, but other than that, we really feel like we're going to be successful, and we'll be able to shift our attention elsewhere. But once we get that button, we did have a spot fire out here that reignited, that got from the interior and spotted outside of itself and made a really substantial run today. And the communities of right here in Buckingham, and then it came down into, started making a run towards Masonville as the wind shifted, Buckingham Heights. And so what that did was it really shifted a lot of our attention to this area. And the reason being is that this fire and this type of fuel type, being grass and whatnot, can really make substantial runs fairly quickly. And that's what we were facing today in these winds. Currently, we have lots of crews engaged in this area. And there's a lot of structures in there that have that we've really been proactive with before the fire front and have been really doing well with that. But we've sent a lot of folks out here. We've identified a place we want to hold that up on the 25 Echo Road from progressing any east. We feel like with the favorable conditions setting in tonight and into tomorrow, with heavy equipment, ground crews, and aerial resources, that will be successful in the finer fuel types down in this area. Glenn had mentioned and talked about the fire movement today, real estate up top of Bobcat Ridge and these areas. And this fire in here gave us an opportunity today to get into the communities of the Retreat and Storm Mountain and do some really good structure protection work in there. And what we were doing is firing around homes and mitigating them as we went, but we didn't have that large fire front barreling down on our resources. We were able to concentrate a mass amount of our folks in there today, or a large amount of our folks in there today, and really be able to get an idea of what we were looking at and how do we mitigate these structures. So very successful in that community, in the community retreat today. Up in Storm Mountain, we were also very successful tying dozer lines in off Bobcat Ridge and into from road system to road system to road system. That was completed up on top of above Storm King, the community of Storm Mountain. Storm Mountain. And what they did there was they put that in to be able to have an indirect line to deflect that fire to the north and be able to protect these structures in here. That was also successful today. As the fire still backs down, it gives us a lot of opportunity to continue to do that. It doesn't get active at any point in time and threaten the Rocky Mountain National Park. I really want to stress our firefighters have been in a firefight for the last 30 hours or so. And we're going to continue to be, especially tonight when the weather gave us a little bit of a break, to be able to be aggressive. And we have the weather now it's conducive to suppression action. So I'm just letting folks know we're going to be very busy in the next 24 hours or so, and just a lot of gratitude to the folks on the ground. They put their heart and souls into this and definitely are working really hard for our communities. So thank you.
Next up, we'll have Sheriff Smith.
Good evening. Sorry about that delay. We were trying to get the mic switched over. A few things I wanted to start out with tonight. First, I promised Dan Dallas I wouldn't steal his thunder. So I've told Dan I'm going to leave a lot for him tonight. But in all seriousness, one of the things that I brought up last night as we went into these weather conditions was the conversation of that commitment of this team to really have those resources on the ground. And I just want to come back and say they absolutely met and exceeded those expectations throughout that period. Everything they had was out there. As we ran into that last night, there were those concerns based on the weather that had been forecast for us, that this was going to potentially be a real runner. We were blessed, as it was said, that it didn't move nearly as much as we had feared over the night. I want to talk a little bit about the things that happened that triggered any changes in evacuations today. And one of those was that run to the east. We had done the evacuations before up to County Road 27, really from Masonville down to the west of there, getting residents out because of concern as that fire ran down with the wind driving it. Our concern was at getting there and then potentially moving further east. Well, unfortunately today it did do that. I guess the good thing is it didn't happen in the middle of the night with that wind on it. While that did really fan the fire, it didn't spot in the middle of the night. It was actually later in the day. And what that did is as it got down to Masonville and it came down that Bobcat recreational area, it got into the lighter fuels down there. Because it reached that trigger point, we did move out over to Glade Road and clear up to the Devil's Backbone with evacuations in that area, because when it came down, it didn't come down in small wind. It came down as that wind was still pressing from the west to the east. And so we had that potential for spot. So we did pull the trigger on making that move over in this area. However, at the same time, those surge engines that this team promised were there, and it's an area they could really catch it, and they did very much an outstanding job on that and caught that up. And so while we do still have the evacuations, we will for a period of time over there. I'm definitely feeling better, and we continue to reevaluate as the weather changes and they're able to button up a little bit more on County Road 27, how long we're going to have to hold those. And that did force some more evacuations around the south end of Horsetooth. And that was partially because of the fire crossing over here at Masonville, but also this spot fire. And again, I'm going to attest they're putting a lot of resources on that. That is an area of continued concern until that can really be buttoned up. With that said, in addition to what's going on with the folks on the fire, Poudre Fire Authority is putting a lot of extra effort into that as well. They're very active up there. It's within their fire district. And I talked to Chief DeMett, and I know they're doing a lot of extra patrols to the east of there, just in case you saw things go off to the east. Number one, to patrol and watch what comes out. And secondly, to get ahead of it and really be able to take care of any spots that might occur. Weather doesn't seem to be nearly as concerning tonight with that. But I do want to point out what's being done, because that question continues to come in. Could this fire, what's the chance of this fire running into Fort Collins? Again, because of the kind of terrain that's between there and the work that's being done and the weather, that really isn't a serious possibility. We plan for everything, but they are certainly working on that. I also want to point out, we still are holding the evacuations down west of Carter Lake, essentially. And the reason for that, well, this fire thankfully has not gotten down to Highway 34. It still has the ability to hook around. They really haven't been able to button up Storm Mountain. Great work is being done there, but it still has a potential to come to the south on Storm. If that happened, it could certainly make that jump. So we're not comfortable telling you that the threat of it crossing the highway is gone. With that said, before I came down today, I had a meeting with town officials in Estes Park. I know there continues to be concerns and questions with the folks that are up there, both the town and visitors that are up, about the ability to ingress and egress or get in and out of Estes, especially since to the south end, you're familiar with the fire that just popped down in Boulder County. I've talked to Sheriff Pelley about that fire. That certainly is a concerning fire, and our hearts go out to the folks in Boulder. They've been standing with us, and they're neighbors to the south. We stand with them. I know they hit 5,000 acres on that, but in Estes Park, they certainly had some concerns. That could be an egress issue because 36 is their primary way out. Highway 7 was closed coming all the way down because of the fire's threat down there. But talking to Sheriff Pelley, they still have the ability to get in and out on Highway 36. So we're comfortable with that. But I also have talked to the team. I've talked to the town officials in Estes Park. If something were to compromise Highway 36, we have plans to be able to get folks in and out on Highway 34, even though that canyon is otherwise closed. I just want people to rest assured we have the ability to address that. And with that, I think there's still a little fire and a little thunder left for Dan Dallas. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dan. Thank you.
Sheriff, thank you. Appreciate it. So last night when things weren't, our situation, especially at the weather and the expected wind, we tried to be real honest with you about what to expect, and things have turned out well. There still was some structure loss, and if you're one of those folks, then our heart goes out to you. But on the other hand, there was some success. I think a lot more things were saved as opposed to lost. So I want to hit again one of the things that I talked about last night, and that's the value of the partnerships and the cooperators that are around here. It's really outstanding to see, and then to watch when those folks have some success for what we brought them here for. The firefight last night was pretty intense. I know my phone rang until pretty late last night or pretty early this morning. But all that said, it was just immediately evident that those surge resources that came from all over Colorado, there's every kind of truck that you can imagine out there, were successful and were incredibly helpful, and we couldn't have done it without them. So having that ability to tap into some of the relationships that are around here, some of the agreements, some of the cooperation that's been set up ahead of time was just invaluable and incredibly useful. The same way the chief mentioned mentioned it earlier, but I'll talk about a couple things. Went up and met with Chief Zagorda at Glen Haven last night or yesterday afternoon, and it was just having him understand and kind of fall in with us on understanding what was going on, where things were, that sort of thing. Then that just made things so much better. And he had some genuine concerns, but it was mainly, with lack of information, he had to make some assumptions as the chief up there, as the responsible official. And as soon as we could fall into line with each other, then so much the better with using his resources alongside of ours. Wanted to talk a little bit and maybe summarize for you what we're seeing. You heard our fuel specialist talk about, or our fire behavior analyst, and you also hear the IMET quite a bit talk about alignment and then the type of fuels that are out there. So you're actually seeing that in action. We did have this spot out here. That's those spots occur all the time. People would be, if you really knew how many spots we chase and put out, it's just a normal circumstance. But once in a while, they'll get out there. We thought we had this spot pretty well buttoned up. It had dozer line and all kinds of stuff around it. But as they mentioned, it fell into alignment with the wind. And you've all had that experience before where you've seen flaming things take off out of your campfire when the wind, things like that. So you can imagine the same thing happened here. And then that gets to something that the sheriff mentioned. So kind of the response to that, which a lot of people don't see. So knowing that, Fort Collins is out here, Loveland's down here, the response to that is our people in overhead positions tend to get behind it, and so they can see what's coming and what to do about it. You had and then that falls into line with what the sheriff does when we talk to him. So people were out in Redstone Canyon. They were checking to make sure what was coming. And of course, the actual work on the line had to do, we first tried to go around to the east side and we call it anchor and pinch. So that's what you saw happen actually out here. And then the last thing I want to mention is I gave a vision of the future, which was kind of bleak last night, but I wanted to be realistic. And what you heard from the incident meteorologist, the weather, and then our fuels, our Glenn, who spoke to you earlier. This is Bulwark Ridge for the most part out here. Everybody who knows the landmarks out here are well aware of it. And in one way, it has gotten, with the weather that's coming tomorrow and then the alignment that happened here on top of the ridge, I anticipate we're gonna have a really good day being able to come up, because it's basically lined up on that ridge. That's a place we can get to, we can do some things with, as opposed to mid-slope and that sort of thing. So we'll still have lighter winds. I never thought I'd call 35-mile-an-hour forecast a lighter wind, but it's lighter than it has been, and we're anticipating being able to really be able to do some good work out here tomorrow. So looking forward to a much better day. Things are looking up, as opposed to 70-mile-an-hour wind. So looking forward to having a really good productive day tomorrow and into the future, based on the weather forecast and kind of where we are and the things that we've done despite some challenging conditions, to be able to start moving around the south end of this fire.
Thanks, Dan. We'll leave you up there, and we got a few questions for you.
Okay, very good.
While you're up there, one question: people have heard that some resources may have been diverted to help the Calwood fire down in Boulder County.
That is correct. Sorry. That's correct. So everybody's been watching, probably, if you've been following us in the briefings we give, but basically 50% of the fire, other teams have worked on it and all that kind of thing. This was basically in what we call patrol status. There were not a whole lot, but a lot of resources still out here that were doing some of the suppression repair and some of the things, patrolling it, making sure that some of the green islands that that are still burning out there didn't cause something across the line, but the risk was really low out there. And I'm well aware, everybody on that does any wildland firefighting is well aware of something that takes off on you, and just you don't have a whole lot of resources and things like that. And so, yeah, we not completely stripped by any means, but we took a lot of the resources that we had on the north end of this fire in branch 1 and sent them down to Boulder for 36 hours, so they would have gear basically to fight that fire that started up this afternoon and took off on a pretty rapid rate. So in 3 hours, it was 5,000 acres. So, we knew that there was significant threat down there. We know what it's like to have almost nothing or a whole scarce resources for what you really need to do. There was significant threat down there, so we basically helped our neighbors out.
Great, thanks, Dan. Speaking up there in that branch 1 up by Red Feather and in those areas on that line, people are saying that they're still seeing some smoke, still seeing some flame. Can you address that?
Sure. Like I said, the line around there is, for the most part, is secure. We're comfortable that line is secure. We're calling that black on the map, means on the perimeter, means it's contained. That said, there's still heavy logs laying on the forest floor. There is going to continue to be smoke out there. Flame might be visible, but it's well inside, and it's all and it's also being monitored with the resources that are left there. It's in essentially patrol status, but people will see smoke out there. They will see, they might even see flames out there, particularly at night. It's something that we also warn and ask people, basically, because they can overwhelm the sheriff's office with 911 calls when it's actually, it's just at that point in time is pretty benign. You just let the fuels burn out.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dan. And then one more question is that we got was, what is success? So what does success look like for this fire? You know, is it you know,
Sure.
yeah.
No, I understand the question. Success is when we've reduced the threat to the point. A line on there. But that said, success is when people like the sheriff, when the people like the forest here, the forest officials here, and the fire management people feel comfortable that they can manage the situation again. That's what success looks like.
We're checking sound here real fast.
It's all right. And I'm holding this thing too. I'm not, it's still blue though, right?
Sound? We're back with sound?
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry about that. I think we got a bad pack of batteries there. So the question that Dan was answering was, what is success for this fire?
And at what point do you want me to just, I can answer it succinctly. Success is when the local officials who have asked us to come here because their capabilities have been exceeded. Success is when they're comfortable with our work to the point where they feel like the risk to the values that they wanted us to help protect have been protected to the point where they're comfortable taking the situation back from us and being able to manage it themselves.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dan. A couple questions for the sheriff. And while we're switching mics, I'll answer a question. We have gotten a question of why are we limiting this to 30 minutes when there's so much going on and there's so many questions. And the answer really is because there is so much going on. As soon as we're done with these meetings or with this meeting, these guys are going to be back out and working. So we want to make sure we're addressing, letting the public know what's going on, trying to answer as many questions as we can, but also let these guys get back out and get to work. So with that, Sheriff, can you give us an update of the status of structure assessments, including up in Pingree Park in that area, but also the other areas where they've been taking place?
I appreciate a question on structure assessments. Unfortunately, as we talked about a little bit, with the weather conditions where they were over the last 24 hours, there was no ability to continue with structure protection. These areas with the winds, the things that were coming through. Today wasn't a day to do that. Today was really a day for as much fire engagement as possible. So we weren't able to make further progress. With that said, I do also want to follow up a little bit, as Dan acknowledged, there was further structure loss, unfortunately, last night, and we certainly know there was some in the Miller Creek area, the upper end of the retreat. Again, not as much as we feared there would be, but sadly there were some. No ability to get back into those right now until those operations, we get that fire line, get the active fire really out of there. Similar for Storm Mountain, I don't know what structure loss is on Storm Mountain, but I certainly have the belief that there's going to be some structure loss up there. So it'll it'll be dependent on being able to get fire behavior and fire activity back down. Having spoken with Chief Dement with Poudre Fire Authority, Chief did tell me that they have confirmed there has been some structure loss up on that Otter road that's on the west side of Christ Mountain, and there is some structure loss up in Redstone. Again, those can't be confirmed, and again, that's an active area, and they'll have to get through there. As it comes to the areas from before, up in Crystal Mountain and things off of the west of County Road 27, we'll get back to that as soon as weather kind of gets stable again. And I was back up in that area again today off of Stringtown, and unfortunately, I know that fire came back through there again, and that's one of our challenges is this thing is not done. So the areas we've been in can have further damage. So we don't have an immediate time when that's going to start. And sadly, we can't say how long it's going to take. Some areas that are easily accessible and there's not the trees that are a threat of falling, those can be gotten to earlier. That's what we started on Thursday. But there's going to be other areas like back on Crystal Mountain. Some of these areas are extremely dangerous, and there's going to be a lot to have to watch where the trees are at. So that's going to take a period of time. We're going to be working as fast as we can, and we'll be talking to the folks that do the damage assessment about the ability, as structure count has gone up, unfortunately, more homes have been impacted, being able to increase the number of personnel that are involved with that.
Okay, thanks, Sheriff. Another question, you mentioned coordinating with Boulder County. They have the Calwood fire now. So how does that work with the different emergency operation centers and how you coordinate with
a good counties? Question about the coordination there. We actually coordinate with different folks that are impacted. I was up meeting with Estes today because their specific challenges are different. Like we talked about, was people getting in and out of town and the safety of needing to get out. Similar with Boulder, with where that's at, we don't see a direct cross. It's far enough down into Boulder County. We're not seeing that being pushed up into Larimer, so they're pretty much on top of that. However, we did have at least one staff member down there within an hour or two of the start on that to get a little bit of a size up, get an idea, because we know they were already busy. And there's two components. One of them is the Emergency Operations Center. Larimer County has one through emergency management set up, and they're dealing with things beyond just the response to the fire and the direct firefighting. They're dealing with a lot of other issues that go on. I know Boulder County has something set up, so there is communication between those emergency managers. And as mentioned before, not only staff, but Sheriff Pelley and I had direct conversations. So we are talking about that. And as Dan acknowledged, that's what being a neighbor is that as they had that tremendous threat occur down there, the team immediately moved some resources off the north. I've offered to Sheriff Pelley, as far as the law resources, if he needs the assistance they gave us, we're going to work with him on that, because I know they're in a very difficult way right now.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. I'll address one question we get a lot is what the public asks, what can we do for firefighters? What do firefighters need? And our firefighters are very well taken care of. They're very well supported, but think about your neighbors. There's a lot of people that are evacuated now. There are Red Cross shelters. There's other local charities and things like that can always use help that will help out your neighbors. Keep the firefighters in your thoughts and your prayers, but think about your neighbors as well when you're looking for places to help. So with that concludes our meeting tonight. Our next meeting, Facebook Live, is scheduled for Monday night at 7:30. So we'll see you then. Thank you.